Alright, time for another update and forecast on the Mosquito Fire. We'll just start off with some of the numbers, and then we're going to look at kind of what activity we actually had on this fire throughout the day, and then what I think is going to be the best part of this video, we're going to take a look at that weather forecast, because believe it or not, could have a shot at some rain towards the end of this weekend. So we'll take a good look at that, and then also kind of discuss the effects that could have on the Mosquito Fire. And with that, I'll just say some good and bad effects from that storm coming in. So we'll be sure to cover that. But first, just want to start off with the basic numbers, get an idea of what happened throughout the day today before we forecast what's going to happen in the future. Looks like we're at 67,669 acres. If we want to see where some of that growth was recently, I don't have the exact data for where it burned today. But overall, we didn't have all that much activity on this fire today. Temperatures were pretty cool, below average for this time of the year. We actually had a little more moisture than yesterday, and that's saying something because we had some decent moisture yesterday. And then those same southwesterly winds, which explains why when I click this on and off, you notice most of the recent growth recently has been towards the northeast and the eastern sides of this fire. Now, key spot that grew since we talked yesterday, although we also had that wildfire insider this morning, is that spot right around there. And it's not just the southwesterly winds that have been leading to some growth in this area. You can also just see how rugged and steep the terrain is around this part of the fire. So not a big surprise that if you get a little part of the fire that pushes right there, it's able to rush uphill. And then it's also just very hard to get crews, and I don't even know if we could have dozers on that side of the fire. But I do know they've been flying some very large air tankers over there, dropping some retardant. Now the big two other things that we could talk about on here, the area around Foresthill, and then also what's going on this northern section of the fire. So we'll just zoom into Foresthill first, because this was kind of the big thing we were worried about a couple of days ago when that spot fire just took off and rushed uphill towards Foresthill. If we actually want to see that again, we can just click off right there. What actually happened was it jumped over the Middle Fork American River, and then it just rushed right uphill right here, and then we have Foresthill up at the top of that hill, and basically we burned all of that right there. Now the good news on that is they had been preparing for an event like this. They had just a large number of completed dozer lines in the area. So great news, they were able to stop that before Foresthill High School and before a lot of these structures that you see in Foresthill. Although we did get I did see a number of vehicles being destroyed. I think it was, you can actually see the little parking lot where that happened right there. So that side, haven't seen all that much growth there recently. And I do know they're tying in a completed dozer line back into the Middle Fork American River right there. So that's going to really, or hopefully, diminish any more growth over here. Although over the last 2 days, we haven't really seen that much activity on that side, which has been great, because I would say when it was rushing up towards Foresthill, that was one of the kind of sketchiest things that we've seen so far this wildfire season. Now, you might have wondered what's going on this northern side of the fire. I'll actually zoom out so you can just get the full picture of the fire again. There's the fire. Over here we have Lake Tahoe, about 25 miles to the west. We have the Mosquito Fire. Then zooming into the top, first glance you might wonder what's going on with the sliver, but that's all actually firing operations, where when the conditions are favorable, they put fire on the ground, basically clear out some of the fuels in that area. And then it also looks like they're putting some on what looks to be a ridge right here as well. And that'll start to make a lot more sense when we look at the fire perimeter map. We'll come right back to that in a second. But first, let's tie it in with the containment number. We're at 20% containment. And if we want to see where that containment is, we can actually go to the map and check it out. Where it's contained is where you see the black line, most of that being on the southern and western edge of this fire, although it does look like some parts of the northern part of this fire are also turning black here. And then you might also notice some of those kind of lines of black X's. and especially around Foresthill. That's what stopped that spot fire before it just went completely through Foresthill. What those mean are completed dozer lines. So that's that completed dozer line I was talking about on the area of that spot fire, connecting it back with the American River. Now, if we come back up to the northern part of this fire, you notice they not only have done this firing operation up here where they cleared out some fuels. Again, the main idea there is if the fire pushes up to there, some of the fuels have been cleared out, so hopefully it just stops in its tracks. But they also have a completed dozer line in there, and then they also have a completed dozer line right there, which ties in with where they're also doing those firing operations. So a lot of work being done on this northern side to make sure it doesn't escape to the north, especially with the constant southwesterly winds we've had, which have led to most of our recent growth being on this northeastern and eastern side of the fire. Now, one thing that you do notice, eastern side of the fire, all red line right there, uncontained. I'd say that's not a huge surprise because that's where we have the most rugged terrain. And also, if we turn on structures, you notice not as many structures on this eastern side. Makes sense that if you only have a certain amount of resources on a fire, you're going to put them around places where there's thousands of structures, especially Foresthill, and this area around here where we already gained that containment. And then once you kind of lock those places up, you can move those elsewhere. But again, that's kind of the wildfire operations part of things. For that kind of information, I'd say Zeke Lunder is always the best for that. I'm more of the fire weather aspect side of things, and we'll definitely be taking a close look at the fire weather throughout the day today. And what's expected to come, including kind of the bad conditions we see for Saturday, but then that chance of rain for Sunday and Monday. So now that's kind of all the recent or the growth that happened in the past. Now let's actually try to figure out kind of what's going on the fire right now. Looks like we did have some activity throughout the day today. I don't notice any, maybe a little smoke coming off of that spot fire right there. You can see it at the very end of this run. So as we got into the afternoon, spot fire picked up a little bit, but certainly not as bad as a couple days ago when that was just taking off. And then still a lot of smoke being produced on this eastern side, although we don't exactly know if that northern section is the fire just taking off or if perhaps that's more of those firing operations that they were doing. Because when we look at the activity map where you see those red stars that shows where there's been some heat recently, you notice a little of that heat showing up on the spot fire around Foresthill. Most of it, though, clearly on this eastern section of the fire. Most of that activity on this part of the fire, and that's the area where kind of we've been talking about, we're forecasting the most growth because, one, we've had those southwesterly winds. I wonder if I turn this on if they're still southwest. Not really. So southwesterly winds pushing that part of the fire towards the northeast in the afternoons. And then also if we turn on fire history, this whole section in here hasn't really had any recent fire history. So there's a lot of abundant, exceptionally dry fuels for the fire to basically move around in there. Now, this is going to tie together some of the other stuff we were talking about earlier. So you might wonder why when we look at this map right here, why they're choosing this section right here to put in the completed dozer line. And then when we look at where there are some new firing operations right on that same little ridge line right there, it's because if you look just to the east of there, and it's interesting that Google Earth might actually be picking this up, but you notice it doesn't look like there's as much vegetation in this whole area. And I don't know how often they rerun this Google Earth satellite, but it certainly looks like there's less vegetation over here. And part of the explanation for that can be if we turn on fire history and you see that directly where they've been putting in that dozer line and that new firing operation. It's almost a perfect puzzle piece to where we had the 2013 American fire. So pretty cool strategy that they're doing on this northern side because we have had some growth there. So what they're trying to do is just block it in with that firing operation, then block it in again with that firing operation, and then use the 2013 American burn scar to basically block it in on the northern side as well. So putting in a lot of effort to kind of shut down this northern side. The big concern would be like something that happened on the Dixie Fire last year, where they had a huge firing operation going around the northern side of the fire, and then we had a windy day come through, took some burning embers, tossed it over where they had cleared out the fuels, and then the fire took off 15 miles in one day. So that's my main concern on the northern side. And unfortunately, in the weather forecast, we do have some gusty conditions coming in on Saturday. So that's something that I'm definitely going to be watching closely on Saturday. But for the time being, I'm expecting most of our future growth to still be on this eastern section of the fire right there, where there's not much fire history, and it'll continue to be fueled by those southwesterly winds. Now, something else we can do is actually just check out the weather conditions that we had throughout the day today. This is actually part of the reason that although the fire was certainly active, it wasn't nearly as active as when we were in the peak of that heat wave. We had triple digit temperatures, relative humidity was down in the low teens. If we click into Foresthill right here, we can wait for it to load a little bit, and then we can click on the weather station. So this isn't model data or anything like this. This is an actual station on the ground. And it looks like our high temperature today was only about 71 degrees, which is about 30 degrees cooler than we were in that heat wave. And then relative humidity is what really helped us out throughout the day today. Notice just hovered around 50%, maybe mid 40s at some points, but that's a lot better than where we were last week. And the reason that's important is because the drier the air is, the drier those finer fuels are going to be, and then the easier it is for that fire to spread or spot fires to ignite. And when you have that much moisture, we've actually had so much moisture on this fire that they've actually had trouble doing some of their firing operations because they put fire on the ground and then it just goes out because there's so much moisture. Now, the other thing I always look at is wind gusts. Looks like we did have some gusts between 10 and 15 miles per hour. That's really not too bad, and certainly not bad compared to what we're going to see on Saturday. So that kind of ties in with the weather forecast. Before we talk about Saturday, we'll just break down tonight. Looks like at about 3 a.m., another great night of relative humidity, increasing into the mid 70s to low 80s. I'd love to ask a wildfire expert about this, maybe Zeke Lender or something, but that's a lot of moisture out there, so I'd be curious to know if they can even do firing operations when the air has that much moisture in it, although we do still have those exceptionally dry fuels out there. Then I want to look at tomorrow afternoon. Looks like tomorrow afternoon is going to be drier than where we were today, so 25% relative humidity. It's still not low teens or single digits, but it's drier than we were throughout the last couple days. Temperature-wise, looks like we're a little bit warmer in the mid-70s. And then if we look at the wind gusts tomorrow, winds, once again, not exceptionally bad, probably around 10 to 20 mile per hour wind gusts in the afternoon. Now, the main thing that I'm concerned at, or before I look at Saturday, I'll just say tomorrow, based on that information, I would say just the fact that it's a little warmer, it's a little drier, and winds about the same, I would expect that we see more growth on this fire tomorrow than what we had today, but less growth than what we had, especially during the peak of that heat wave when we were in the triple digits. So not exactly a hot take right there. Less than the heat wave, but more than where we've been nice and cool and moist the last couple days. So expecting more growth tomorrow. Now let's check out Saturday, because this is kind of the big concern for me in the forecast is Saturday. It looks like our wind gusts, we'll actually click through the day to watch those wind gusts increase. So around 5 a.m., it's 12 mile per hour winds. Then 8 a.m. jumps up. It's a little slow right there. By 11 a.m., it's at 22. By 2 p.m., we have 28 mile per hour wind gusts. 5 p.m., over 30 mile per hour wind gusts. And you notice those are coming from a very southerly direction. A lot of times you will get south winds when a storm is coming in. So with that, my main concern is what we were talking about on this northern edge of the fire, that a burning ember would be picked up, thrown over all the operations that they've been working so hard to put in, While I'm talking about it, let's just measure how long this firing operation is, because that's honestly amazing. That is over 5 miles, and that's just using that sliver right there. I'd imagine the firing operation probably just continues to go down this side of the fire as well. So again, my big concern on Saturday is that these gusty winds would be able to pick up a burning ember and throw it over here, but I imagine all our people on the ground have been doing this for years. They have a lot of experience, so that's why they've been putting in so much hard work on this northern edge. And it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow as things get a little bit drier. Now, when it comes to this storm, I kind of was talking about the winds coming in, but I didn't really explain what was actually happening with the storm. So we've had like this little troughing pattern over California the last few days, and that's what's been leading to those nice below average temperatures that we've had. And it's actually just part of an even bigger troughing pattern that's going to be moving in, and we're going to be getting what you call a cutoff low. So that's where the trough almost breaks off from itself, and then it's going to be moving off of the California coast throughout the weekend and into Sunday and Monday. Now, the reason this is a concern for Saturday is if we go back here to, we'll go, close to where we are right now, Thursday into Friday. You look at the area over Tahoe, and these lines that you see right here are called isobars, so lines of constant pressure. And you notice there's one line stretching all the way from below Tahoe up to the Oregon border. Now, as we click into this storm getting closer, you notice that those lines get a lot closer together. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 isobars in that same distance where previously we only had 2. Now, what that means is there's going to be faster winds. Now, if that doesn't exactly make sense, think of it like a tray. And think of that tray, you're holding it, it's flat, and somebody pours a little water on one edge of the tray, and then you kind of slightly tilt it. That's what it looks like right now. That tray is just slightly tilted, and the water is going to slowly drip to the other side. So that's what our winds are doing in here. They're just kind of slowly moving on that kind of tilted atmosphere. Hopefully that makes sense. So the tray is like your pressure, the water is like your winds. Now, as you get into this storm getting closer and those lines are closer together, that's like somebody tilts that tray to 45 degrees, you pour some water on that again, and it just goes rushing down. So that's what the atmosphere is doing. The atmosphere is literally getting steeper right here. So your winds are going to be rushing a lot more, and that's why Saturday is a concern. Now, it's not just a concern because we have some gusty winds. You might be thinking, well, it's getting windier, but there's a storm coming in, so maybe it's just going to bring some rain at this point too. Temperature-wise, we're still in the low 70s, but our humidity is actually less than we have been the last couple days. So we're going to have moderately dry air at the same time that we have those gusty winds. So I'd say Saturday is the number one day that I'm going to be watching moving forward. I expect tomorrow to see more activity than what we had today, and then Saturday to have more activity than what we have tomorrow. So that's all kind of the bad news. Now let's actually get to the good news. After that storm goes off the coast, then it's actually going to move into California. And when it does that, it has the chance to bring some rainfall. So let's look at the timing of this rainfall event, and then we'll also look at the totals to see if this could have an impact on the Mosquito Fire. So right there, we start to see some rain showing up as early as 11 p.m. Saturday night. Then the front starts to hit early Sunday morning, and by about 8 a.m. on Sunday, we actually start to see some of that moderate rainfall moving into parts of the Bay Area, down to the Central Coast. That's going to be great for fire danger. It's unbelievable to see a system like this coming in. Now, one thing I will say, we can't get too excited too early about this, because early season storms like this are notorious for falling apart at the last second. I think it happened 2 or 3 times last year where everything looks good, and then about a day before the event, it kind of falls apart. So we're going to be watching this closely, but as of right now, every time the models update, it's actually been looking better. So we're moving in the right direction, at least when it comes to that. Now at 11 a.m. on Sunday, that's the first time where we're starting to see some of that light rain reaching over the Mosquito Fire. So this explains what I was just saying, how the models have been getting better. When I first looked at this a couple days ago, we weren't really seeing any rain moving in over the Mosquito Fire. Now we're actually seeing it as early as 11 a.m. Then on 2 p.m. on Sunday, even more light rainfall over the Mosquito Fire. And then 5 p.m. Sunday, still raining. Then on Monday, we get another round coming through and maybe even some heavier rain on Monday. Now, whenever you say heavy rain over a wildfire, big concern is always things like debris flows or mudslides, because when you get a fire, and you can actually kind of see this where we had the American fire right there, clears out a lot of the vegetation, and it's the vegetation's roots that really hold the hillside in place. So where we've had this fire, it's cleared out some of the vegetation, which is the structure for the hillside. So then that can lead to some debris flows and mudslides. So I think that will be something I'm watching. But just based on the model data right now, it doesn't really look like moderate to heavy rainfall is going to be moving over the Mosquito Fire. More of that moderate rainfall is for the Bay Area and the Central Coast. Looks like we're just, as of right now, getting some light rain over the Mosquito Fire, which would just be great, because it's not going to put the fire out by any standards, but it's certainly going to help bring some moisture back into our fuels. So now, actually, let's see, when does the rain stop? It looks like the last of the rain is about 5 a.m. on Monday. So looks like it's mostly a Sunday to early Monday morning event as of right now. Now, if we want to look at the totals expected, let's click in here and click through. Love to see a map that looks like that during wildfire season. 1.5 inches or over that for Santa Rosa. That's an inch more than this morning's model runs were saying. So the storm is the storm's not increasing, but our understanding of the storm is saying that it's getting larger. San Francisco, almost 2 inches. That would probably be a record, probably an all-time record for San Francisco this early in the season. And then does look like that greenish to bluish color over the Mosquito Fire would be few hundredths of an inch, maybe up to a half an inch. So again, it's nothing to get too excited about. It's not like it's going to completely put the fire out, but it's certainly going to help. And how things have been trending every time the models come out, they seem to get better. So I'm going to continue to look at this and follow this over the next few days, as well as everything that's going on for the Mosquito Fire. And if you want to join me tomorrow morning for the Wildfire Insider, it's a little more interactive, where I keep an eye on the live chat, I answer questions and comments, and we kind of try to just figure out what's going on with wildfire all together. So for that, you can subscribe to this channel, and I'll also do a few more updates on Twitter throughout the night tonight, just on the key takeaways from this video, in case you don't want to watch the entire thing. So hopefully this video was helpful, and we'll cross our fingers and hope that chance of rainfall does end up coming through. So have a good night. I'll see you all tomorrow morning.